Awesome. Well, hey, welcome, Logan. I'm so thankful that you're down to chat today and talk a little bit about young adult ministry, about groups, about community. For our young adults here at Sanctus Church, how about you tell us just a little bit about who you are as a leader, about the church that you're part of, River Valley, and your role there, leading 20 plus the young adult ministry.
Your church, and I have the privilege to serve at a church called River Valley. We've been around it'll be our 25th year this year. So we started in a small school, and now we've grown. We have around nine campuses currently, and we have services on the university, and we have been doing that for a while now. And now I jumped in 3 years ago, and I serve on our young adult ministry. So I have a very similar role to you, and oversee that for all of our different campuses. And River Valley as a whole, we every weekend, have the privilege to have around, 10,000 people worship with us here in the Minneapolis area. And so it's a big privilege. It's a huge opportunity that we are stewarding right now, but we're grateful that God's given that to us. And I have the privilege to help kind of with our young adults, some digital strategy as well. Sometimes the young adults, you wear multiple hats, but the last 3 years have been amazing.
That's awesome. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about how 20 plus is kind of set up. Like, what do you guys do in the year? How's it structured? What would it be like if a young adult joined 20 plus?
Totally. Yeah. Hopefully a great experience. I think in young adult ministry, and maybe some of your leaders have experienced this, but it's always changing. There's always different things that are happening. Right now we have a pretty good rhythm that we enjoy, where we kind of kick off our year with a big event. And that's like our school year as well as the new year. So usually in September and in January, February, we do a big event and kind of get all of our campuses together. And then weekly we're in groups, and groups is a big part of what we do. I think a lot of the best discipleship happens in groups. And those are made up of different leaders from across our campuses. Some of them are college students who are freshmen. Others are, young adults who are into their careers, and usually the groups reflect the leader as far as the people that are in their group. But we have around a little over ends up being like 30 groups at our campuses across that I get to lead. And then I have some regional leaders as well that lead those people, because I'm not able to lead 30 groups with multiple leaders at one time. And so we have some great leaders that do that in our regions. And then every month, what we do right now is we have 3 weeks of groups. And then our fourth week, we come together by region. Rather than having all the campuses come together, it can be a little overwhelming to have that many people. We kind of break down in regions and do smaller group settings of maybe anywhere from 60 to a couple hundred people that go to those. And so that happens once a month. And instead of life groups, they go to that. That just works for us. And we call those culture combos. And those are a great time to hear from different guests, talk about topics in culture, whether that be relationships or mental health or insecurity, all of those things that we do. So that's kind of our rhythm and our model that we do. And then we usually take a break in May and at the end of August for a few weeks, and then around Christmas time. So to break things up a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. So how about if someone was to join a group, what would a group look like for you guys, a life group, in terms of, the leaders and kind of like what you guys would do each night at a group, and what would that experience be like for someone?
Yeah, so right now all of our groups meet on Thursday nights, and that's just a way for us to build unity. Also, church calendars get really busy, and so sometimes we found some of our other groups that were based upon, like Alpha or Freedom is what we call one of our groups, or Financial Peace University. I know in Canada, I don't think you can have Financial Peace University because the name university. Anyways, we have those groups that happen on other days. So Thursday night is our night for groups. And so if somebody would show up, our model is built where anyone could come throughout the semester. One of the things that we've loved about this new system for us is we change topics every 4 weeks. And so people who show up at our culture combo event, it's a really great influx point for people to get involved in a group, because it's, oh, hey, are you in a group next Thursday? You're here on a Thursday. You're already free that night. You should show up next week to groups. So we see that as a really good way to meet new people. But a group, the way it would look is usually the first 30 minutes we're hanging out, just having a good time. usually try and have someone in the group bring snacks. Obviously, as college students and young adults, that can be a financial burden, but we usually try and move that around. And then right now, what we're doing is we're actually filming videos that I record. We have all those up on YouTube, but we premiere a new video every Thursday of me teaching a short message. We just wrapped up a series on James, but I'll basically talk about what God's speaking to me, what I want the groups to be talking about. And then the leader will take it from there. So those are anywhere from 4 minutes to 10 minutes long. And then the leader has a discussion time. And then after, which is probably, I think, our best part that we get feedback from all of our leaders, is we do prayer, and we break down into groups of 2, 3, or 4, guys and girls separately, and just really, talk about what God's doing. And we've actually seen those times grow. Originally, the discussion was around 30 or 40 minutes, and prayer was about 10. We've seen discussion be about more 20 and prayer be more 20, 25, because we see a lot of people grow in that time where they're maybe not comfortable to share to a group of 12, but they would be to a group of 2 or 3. And then after that prayer time, obviously, hanging out after, if the leader is available to host that. But that's a typical life group night that we do, and it's worked well for us right now.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great to hear. So in terms of leaders, because a lot of the people listening to this for us will be some of our group leaders and people interested in being leaders in the future, what would you say are just some of the qualities that you've seen in your leaders that are maybe leading really great groups, really healthy groups, creating good culture? What do you look for, I guess, in a leader?
Yeah, I think a big thing that I look for is, do people love people? And it sounds simple, but I think if you're going to be a group leader, if you are one now, or if you're looking to be one, you have to love people and want to see them grow. I think sometimes people think they want to be a leader because they want a mantle of responsibility, or they want a platform. And I think some of those things are okay to want. It's not bad or sin necessarily. But I think if that's the only reason we want them, we miss the real win of small groups, is to have relationships with people. And so honestly, if you're looking for a group of your next best friends, that should be your small group or your life group. And I think that if that's the attitude you have, you're going to have an amazing group. I know for me, even as the pastor of the ministry, the people that I'm FaceTiming with the most, the people that I'm texting the most, the people who are in my groups are people who've been in past groups with me. It's literally the place where you should go to find your best friends and to hang out with them. And so if you're someone who doesn't have a lot of friends, what a great place to go. And so I also think a great quality of a life group leader. Do you call them life groups, by the way, or small groups, or?
We do, yeah, young adult groups, as we call them.
Okay, so if you're a young adult group leader, it's like you should want to bring people in. If you say, hey, we got 8 people and that's the max, and they're all my best friends, and you just kind of isolate yourself, I think you're missing an opportunity to reach people who are really lonely. And so as a leader, caring about people, and I think if you do, the second one's going to be hit, which is going to be an inviting culture. I heard this from a leader the other day. I had a chance to hear a conversation, and he said they changed their values of their organization. It's $1 billion organization, and one of their values was to be like open with everybody, like be willing to accept anybody into their circles. And he said, we changed that because it was not actionable enough. We changed it to, instead of being open for anybody to come, welcoming even, we're going to be inviting. And we're actually going to go and bring people into our groups. And so I think as a group leader, that goes not just on inviting somebody to your group, but when they show up, to say, I'm going to make you feel welcome by pulling you in, by introducing you to people. We see this happen even in our groups. And I hate hearing when it does happen, but it's, okay, they showed up and nobody really talked to them. They got a welcome or a wave at the beginning, but they sat on that chair alone by themselves, or they were on the couch, but they weren't really communicated with. And then they say, oh, we'd love to have you back next week. And it's like, you shouldn't have to make an invitation to come back. It should be so obvious that you've welcomed and invited them and pulled them into your community. And if you don't have space for that, sometimes that's the problem. That's where multiplication of life groups should be happening, or young adult groups. That's what, growth needs to happen. Because if you don't have room to grow, maybe there's a leader in your group, or someone who could become a leader that could grow and create a new group that creates an opportunity for a bunch more people to find friends.
Yeah. No, that's great. Yeah, I agree. Like, I think, that heart of invitation is just so important. And I think even like in a moment like we're in right now, as we record this, we're kind of at the start of this coronavirus stuff. And I think there's a lot of people looking for, just someone to connect with. And yeah, I think, our leaders who are going after people and going, hey, how can I invite you into my community? I think that's, yeah, so meaningful. What would you say, you mentioned a couple of them there, but what would you say are some of the challenges that you've seen in groups that maybe some of your leaders face, some of the obstacles that come with just doing community well? And then also are some just the best parts about doing groups that kind of make it worth it, even though there are challenges?
Yeah, I'm gonna start with the best because that's exciting. I think the best part of groups is you get to see people actually even more than probably us as pastors develop. And the story I love to tell, but one of my regional leaders, which is kind of like not levels, but like it's the highest amount of responsibility in our ministry as a volunteer position. And so there's 3 of them in our ministry, and they oversee about 10 to 15 life group leaders each. And so one of our regional leaders came to our life group with his brother and his future sister-in-law. They were just dating at the time. And that couple, they were basically on the brink of their relationship. He wouldn't stop drinking and she wanted him to stop, and he just would party and just was not really living for the Lord. And she wanted to get married, but didn't really want to marry somebody who was living that way. So then his brother comes, and he's loves to smoke weed, and he loved Jesus, but he loved to smoke weed too. And so they came to our group, and we just were able to just disciple them and love on them. And 3.5 years later from that point on, he's leading our region in a great, successful relationship. One of our amazing leaders obviously is not smoking weed anymore, but he's just been on fire for God, is leader of our setup team at one of our campuses. I got to marry his brother and his wife, and they just had a baby, and like they're just totally on fire for God and living for it. And it's like the transformation that you get to see as a life group leader. And that's just in 3.5 years, which in young adult context is like forever, but in the scope of your life, that's not that long. And so that's my favorite part about it, is you literally get to see people transform, sometimes even on a weekly basis, but over the long term, it's an amazing thing to see. And obviously with that, there's challenges. Even what I talked about, you get people who show up to your group that are just not in the same place. And you're trying to balance, okay, some people over here are like super strong Christians. They've been saved since they were, a baby, and their mom prayed over them. They didn't allow a dirt devil in the house vacuum because it was too, non-spiritual. They're oversaved. And then you got other people who literally just showed up off the street, so to speak, and they're partying still, they're living that lifestyle. And it's, as a leader, you have to manage that tension between how do I still give the food to people who need it from who have been Christians for a while, but how do I present the grace of Jesus in a way that is still welcoming to people? And so that's a challenge, and I think it's a gift that people have. And then another one that's a challenge, I think, is just figuring out how to deal with momentum swings. Because sometimes you're going to have groups, like literally this last fall, our group was probably close to 60 people every single week.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what on earth is happening? It was the start of the university campus or semester. And we're just getting tons of people showing up every single week. And so we split into multiple rooms, and then we're splitting into another room and smaller groups and trying to figure it out. And now this semester, we have probably around 15 showing up to that same group. There's been other groups that have been started from it, but I think you have this momentum of, oh, there's so many people showing up. But what's happening is people are getting discipled better, but it doesn't feel quite as good because you want it to be, oh, I want the people, I want the momentum. So dealing with those swings to know some weeks there's going to be 3-4 people that show up. Other weeks there's going to be 30 or 40. And some semesters are going to be rocking. Other semesters are going to be tough. But know that lives are being changed. People are growing. And this is what Jesus wants you to be doing. And I think that's something that we miss is, oh, this is what Pastor Josh wants me doing, or this is what the young adult ministry wants me to be doing. This is what Jesus wants you to be doing. He wants you to be discipling people, breaking bread with people. It's cliche Christian words, but it's the truth. And so I know that was a little long, but I think that's the challenges and benefits of what leading a group can be.
Yeah, no, that's so good. Yeah, I think I loved what you said about the momentum one, because, I've even experienced that myself. Before I became a pastor, I was just a group leader. at my last church. And yeah, there'd be those seasons, those weeks, even like week to week. One week you have, 35 people and it's bumping and it's just amazing. And then the next week there's like, 13, and all of a sudden it just feels like what happened? And yeah, I think that steadfast perseverance is so good. So
And I
appreciate
think it's perspective too, because if you had 6 and then you had 13, you're thinking this is the best time ever. And I think that's why sometimes we get mixed up with our numbers, is we think numbers are the reason for why we do groups. And I think numbers are important. I think sometimes people bash on numbers because they're like, oh, like it's not about the numbers, it's about the individual. But then I think they're missing the point of the Great Commission. But then you have other people where it's like, it's all about the numbers, just the bigger you get, the better you are. And I think Jesus was probably somewhere in between, or I'd hope from what I read, I think that. And so we want to be growing. Like, we don't want our young adult ministry to just stay at the same spot. We don't want our groups to just stay at the same spot. But I do think if we're at 20, 30, 40 people, all of a sudden you have 25 people that are just totally not connected. And they're just showing up to, I don't know, meet somebody who's a pretty person or something, or maybe they're just showing up because they have nowhere else to go. And so I think what we've tried to look at is, from a numbers perspective, like anywhere from 7 to like 13, 14 is probably your sweet spot from a group. But even maybe smaller, like the 6, 7, 8, from a discipleship standpoint, is probably, the best spot to live.
I appreciate you sharing that. Right now, with everything going on with the coronavirus, COVID-19, and how that's affecting, churches and just the world and people's community and ability to connect. What's kind of your church and your young adult ministry doing to, adapt, especially with your groups? Like, I'm assuming you guys are looking at some online options, and our groups
Yeah.
are just starting to launch right now as we record this video. So we're kind of right in this weird spot of like, we all had these plans ready to go, and now they're completely up in the air and we're trying to shift. What's some of the stuff that you guys are doing or thinking on doing?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing about pivoting with stuff like this, and obviously when where people are watching this, we may be in the heat of something really bad, or that coronavirus might be old news. It's moving so fast, we literally have no idea. But I think it's first handling it with grace. I think it was right away what we did as a church is we were like, all right, let's like go, go, go. We got to create all this content. We got to do it. We got to do it. And I think right away we realized we were maybe missing it. Is it wasn't all about just getting as much content out there. Like, what are people really needing? What is their felt needs? What is the realities of what they're living in? And so we kind of pivoted to how can we care for people better. But in this season, for young adults specifically, we've leaned into digital life groups. And basically that's, we're on Zoom right now, but it's using Zoom, using Google, using FaceTime as an opportunity to connect with people. And we had our first digital life groups this past week, and we have, our second coming up here in a couple of days. And it's an interesting thing. And I think the reports that I heard back was some people had really great groups. Other people, it was really a struggle. And I think that's okay. I don't think we're here to say like, oh, all digital life groups were just amazing. But like the one that I was a part of went really well. And I think there's a lot of community there that can happen. But I think it's knowing where people are at. And if your group is smaller than you thought, well, it's because we happen to have a pandemic going on in the world. Like, it's not because you're a bad leader. And sometimes we put that on ourselves, or it's not because you created a bad system. It's because everybody's system got blown up, And so I think that's something to think about too, is, hey, I'm going to try going digital, or I'm going to try doing this. We've been doing these interviews, on our Instagram. We've been, trying to do new things. But I think the biggest win that we've experienced from it is we have the list of everyone who's been active in our church in the last 18 months, I think it is, or it might be 12 months, but it's like over 20,000 people, it's crazy. And it's like, we're calling every single one of them. And we've had some amazing calls of people who've lost their jobs, or people who have family who have coronavirus, or people who are dealing with stuff where they're worried about it. We've been able to pray with them. And some people are like, hey, I'm totally fine. It's all good. But I mean, thousands and thousands of calls that have been happening to people from all different age groups, but, young adults, in our context. And I think that's something that I don't think we should miss is, let's be the church. Let's be people. Let's be, friends to the people who don't have friends. Let's be friends to the people who've lost their job. Let's be friends to the people who need it. Even though we're not able to be there and sit with them, we're able to connect with them in different ways. So that's been a big part of what we've been doing at our church that we've kind of put into our young adult ministry as well, to just get in contact. And, for us, it's FaceTime as many people as you can.
Yeah, no, totally. I think, for our church too, it's been a response of, how do we just reach out and check in with people? I know, last week for me and young adult is basically getting a bunch of text messages from people being like, hey, I'm laid off work. Do you know anyone? Or
Yeah.
trying to move where I live right now. And like, I don't even know if I can get into a new rental. What do I do? And hey, pray for my family. They're all stuck in Europe. How do they get back? And I think a lot of people are just looking for someone to talk to, someone to pray with right now. And
Yeah.
it's tough. Everyone's getting hit differently. What kind of encouragement would you give to, like I said, a lot of our leaders are going to be listening to this, and a lot of them are in this weird moment of a lot of them have been getting ready to lead groups the last couple of months, and they're excited to start it. Now they're kind of hit with this curveball of, something that's just unexpected and really changes how groups are going to run. What advice, what encouragement would you give them to step into this next couple of weeks and months of leading in a new way, unexpected way?
Yeah, I think I always try and think of scripture, and I literally, as you're asking that question, I just kind of asked God in my head, like, God, is there a verse that you can think of? And right away, I was drawn to David, and when his men or Saul went into a cave, and his men said, "All right, this is your opportunity. The Lord has given him into your hands. You can go and kill Saul and take over the kingdom that is rightfully yours, because God, had blessed him to be king and anointed him." And David does something totally different. He says, "No, how am I to, do it in my timing, not God's timing?" He didn't feel right about it. And so instead, what he did is he cut off a piece of his robe, and he had a confrontation with Saul and said, "Look, I'm not your enemy. I'm for you. And I don't want to kill you. I could have, but I did." And so I think in this season, I think maybe the world or your own mind or your own perspective on what was going to happen with your groups or what's going to happen with this, thing right now, it's like, don't let it be your timing. Don't try and push something through that isn't from God, because there is a pandemic going on right now. There is a lot of people that are hurting, that are trying to figure it out, whether or not it's from the virus or not. Economically, there's a lot of people struggling. And so I think that it'd be a shame if we tried to push our agenda forward through the midst of this. And what you're going to see on the other side is you're going to see something that is misshapen and misformed because it was pushed through something that was not the right door. And I think that's maybe wisdom for all of us, is to be that way, to say, you know what, I'm going to do something. I'm not going to just not do anything, but maybe it's going to look different than even the people in my group thought it was. Maybe it's going to look different than the people who are in my world. And maybe people aren't even going to like it. And that's the hardest part, is people are going to, critique it from both sides. That's something with our church. When we closed down our church before the government said we had to, or do we keep it going when the government says we shouldn't meet it? You're going to hear it from both sides. And you have to be okay with that and say, I'm listening to God. And so let's choose that option that isn't the option that makes maybe sense to everybody else. Let's choose the option that makes sense to God. So
yeah, that's great. I appreciate that encouragement to me as a leader, to all of our leaders. To just be listening to God's voice in this season and being like, hey, what do you want to do here, God? Because none of us were ready for this. And I think sometimes God can move in pretty cool ways when we're kind of caught off guard. So I'm excited to see what he does. Well, Logan, I've appreciated you taking the time to just speak some life into our community, into our leaders, into our young adults. Just thank you again, and thank you for what you're doing at River Valley with 20 Plus. And I'm excited to see some of the stuff that you guys are putting out over the coming months with conversations with other leaders and all that stuff. So thanks, Logan.
I appreciate it a lot. Love you guys.
Have a good one, buddy. See ya.